Okay, so my name's Susan Coulter. I'm from Los Alamos National Laboratory, and I don't know how many of you were here last year, but last year at the end of the conference, when we had the discussion about what worked and what didn't, and getting all kinds of feedback, I had the bright idea that the users should get together. This is a great workshop, and I always learn a lot here, but I kind of felt like there was a focus missing for those of us who mostly administer an open fabric system or a fabric of some sort. So we actually, let me see if I can figure this out. Okay. Oh, I can use arrow keys too? Yay, okay. First one, we had an inaugural user day last August. And we put it together pretty quickly, and we held it at Argonne. It was 1.5 days. We had a handful of presenters, and it was basically a lot of, there were subjects that we began discussing, but there was quite a bit of discussion, which was nice. That's kind of what we wanted to get started with. There was also quite a bit of complaining, which we also knew was going to happen. Because most people, they all had the same experience. There's nothing on, you try to Google stuff, it's not on the web, you get old data, it says you can do things, but you can't. The spec says it's possible, but it really might not be. So there was quite a bit of complaining. And there were right around 40 people. So it seemed to go over pretty well. Out of that meeting, we started a users mailing list, which has had some traffic. It kind of dropped off lately. But it was clear that we were kind of filling a void, and so we decided to have another one, which we decided should also happen in conjunction with the developers workshop. And as Jim said, there was a little bit of scheduling difficulty. We needed to get the two kind of back to back, but we didn't want to change the developers workshop. The developers workshops always started on a Sunday night, so we didn't want to mess with that. But we wanted to have it first so we could provide some feedback to the developers. So that's why it spanned the weekend, which I kind of enjoyed. It was kind of nice having the weekend here, but it is hard for some people. So as Jim said, we got a lot of feedback that was kind of hard. So we probably won't do that again. But this year it was we had 15 different presenters from all those different companies that are listed, organizations listed up there. 3 of the presenters were actually attendees at the August workshop. So I thought that was good. They kind of stepped forward, and a couple of them actually helped to plan the user day, and then they gave some presentations. If you go to the Open Fabrics website, you can see what our agenda was if you're interested in the detailed subject matter. And there was a lot less complaining. It was really, there was still some discussion about how things worked and how people were doing different things. But I think it was much more constructive. I think it went off really well. I say 40 plus. I would say I think the number was 41 official registered attendees, but there were other folks that were there to present, or they were there for just part of the time. So it was between 40 and 45 people, which was not bad. We were in this room. It was a U-shaped table, which was nice, so we were all kind of, it fostered some discussion. Anyway, I feel like it went pretty well. Some of the feedback as far as the conference itself, we created a survey that we sent out, or we laid at the table, and we got 23 responses, which is a little bit over half. And basically, I think the best sign is that 100% of the respondents said that they would recommend the conference to a colleague or a friend. So I think we're getting close to the mark. 82% said they would come back again. There was only one who said no. So I don't know what's up with that, but that's always going to happen. And then there were some that said they couldn't come back, perhaps due to funding, which we're all dealing with that. As the results kind of show, it does look like we're doing a good job. So we probably will have another one next year, and we'll probably have it in conjunction with this conference. We did, it's kind of my fault. One of the complaints that we heard via the survey was that we didn't manage the speaker's time very well. And because we really want this to be a conference for the users, and so that they get out of it what they want, when there was discussion, we really didn't shut it down. So there were a couple times when Jim and I talked about it, and we said, let's just let this continue because people are asking questions, and we don't want to shut that down. So that was our fault, my fault for doing that. And there were a couple of comments that said more on the management of IB, and the other one down there that said we needed more admin type talks. I wish that, and maybe we have the names of the people who said that. It was voluntary to put your name on it, because I would like to know what to them, what does that mean to them? Because that's what we were trying to focus on, and if we missed it, it would be nice to know, what they're looking for, because we're trying to meet the needs of the admins and the users, so maybe we can get some more feedback there. The other thing that I thought was good is we had some comments that it should be extended to 2 days instead of a day and a half. The first day was kind of an intro. Rupert and Dr. Russell from UNH gave some introductory stuff. And then the second day was really full. I think we started at 8:30 and we ended at 6:30. So it was a very full day, and obviously folks thought it was useful, and some folks felt like it should be 2 full days. As far as feedback from the users to the developers, I have this broken down into general and specific. Nothing new on the general side of the house. Monitoring came in first. There's a variety of options. There's a lot of overlap. Some of the output's inconsistent. We all know that. It's been getting better, and a lot of people are doing a lot of good work with it. But that did come out as one of the complaints, or the part of the feedback. Congestion handling was pretty big. How do you know it's there, where it's at, and how to deal with it? Routing options and verification. Some of that, I think, centered around, first of all, knowing that your routing is actually working and it's balanced. And then there was some concern about when you have luster networks, not everybody needs to talk to everybody. So you either have to set up your fabric so that, in an up-down fashion or something like Livermore's done, so that you don't need routes between certain places. So those were some of the conversations that were being had. Better partition support, that came out a couple times, both in the meeting and at the social hour conversations. And obviously scaling issues, those were all general. The more specific issues that I wrote down, and I don't know if there were others, as far as UFM, people wanted more information, and they wanted to know how that might work with existing monitoring and how that would overlap. IB Utils 2, maybe everyone here knows this, but we discovered, or it was made clear to us, that IB Utils is kind of obsolete or defunct. It's not being supported. And some of the tools that are in that package, people in the room were still using. IBDM Check and IB DiagNet, I think, were the two mentioned. But IB Utils 2 apparently is supporting some of those things. And so there was concern that should be in the main branch and it should be accessible. So that was another comment. And then 2 more about that were related to storage networks. It appears, at least to those of us in the room, unless there's something we don't know about, that SRP targets don't have an easy way to give them a name that's recognizable, like an IB node name map type of functionality. That was brought out, as well as in the documentation, it claims that SRP only works with the default partition. And I think there was a little bit of testing that someone had done, and they weren't sure. So that was another concern. So that's some of the feedback from the users to the developers. And I'm actually hoping that if we do this next year and they're more back-to-back, when we mentioned it last year at this conference, there were several people in the room who felt like, as a developer, they would like to be involved or at least kind of sit in the background during a user meeting, because if you're writing this tool and the people who are using the tool can't use it or they don't understand it, getting that feedback and closing that loop would be really important. So I'm kind of hopeful that there'll be more overlap next year between the users and the developers. I know a bunch of us, I consider myself a user, a bunch of us are in this room, even though it's the developers workshop. So there is already some overlap, but I'd like to see that, that grow. So basically, I think User Day is filling a void. I think it's doing its job. I think it was moderately successful. One thing that we have struggled with both times is better advertisement. How do we reach the people? I know there are more than 40 users of InfiniBand out there, and that's about what we had in the room. And I know that there are people out there who would probably benefit. I've spoken to some who said they just couldn't afford to come to both conferences, so they picked one. And so they picked this one, which is probably wise. But if we can expand our advertisement, that would be great. And so those were some of the ideas that were thrown out either during the discussion or at social hours. Something called Dell XL, which I'd never heard of, and the SC lists, stuff like that. The other thing is the users mailing list. You know, we started that in August, and I was not sure if it was appropriate. Like I said, we had some traffic on it, and then it kind of dropped off. We've had a little bit recently. And so we brought up the discussion, do we think this list is still valid? And most people did, and most people, I mean, the other mailing list is Linux RDMA, right? But it's mostly for developers and submitting patches and asking questions from the developer's point of view. And most of the people in the room did feel like the questions they had, they didn't feel like the Linux RDMA list was the right place. So we are going to continue with the users list. So that's about all I had as a report from the user day. Like I said, I think it went pretty well, and we're going to continue. I don't know if anyone has any questions about the day or getting involved for next year. Yes?
Would it be helpful for developers to be speakers just as a target? Tell us what you would like, and then let the developers discuss things, perhaps bring pointers to how to use the tools?
Yes, that would be fabulous. And in fact, we had a lot of speakers, but a couple of them, I think we kind of twisted their arm. And one of them, if I can be so bold, was Hal Rosenstock. He came and gave a very good presentation on OpenSM, because that is often a bit of a black box. I mean, we kind of feel around the edges and we think we understand pretty much, and then we find out we don't understand very much at all. You know, so it's a cyclical thing. And he came and presented. So having the experts or the developers in the field come and present would definitely be, that's exactly the kind of thing we're looking for. Obviously, we're also looking for, I would like to see more content from the user community. You know, this is how we've done it, or, you know, lessons learned sort of thing. But mixed in with that is having the experts and the developers be there as well.
So in order to be able to justify this to my management, would that require a full registration, or is this something that I can, simply I would like to present, do, leave the room?
I'll let Bill respond to that. We had some of those questions this year already.
I'm the treasurer of the Open Fabrics Alliance, and we have a rule: no free registrations. And the reason we do that is because we're a non-profit organization, right? And we need revenue to operate. Right? We have very low dues for joining, right? And it's necessary from a business point of view. You know, where do you, if you say yes to one person, what happens to the next one? What happens to that one? So.
And I'm not saying I'm not going to do it if it's not free. That would be
No,
highly exclusive. But I just was wondering if there was a way I could present this to my manager. Hey, they want to hear it. They want to ask this question. I can do it for less money. My management likes to hear things.
So.
I understand.
Well, I must admit that I took this opportunity to stand up and say what I just said, right? I wasn't pointing at you. But it brings up another question that I wanted to ask, particularly the vendors in the room. If I was a vendor, and like I'd pick Mellanox and I have a users group in Mellanox, why has Open Fabrics also got a users group? Is there some conflict? Right? And I just wanted some feedback from you as to whether you would perceive that, Mellanox or HP or Microsoft, who have, they're both vendors, they use our software, they have their own users organizations. Are we doing something that conflicts with them? Would they like to participate with us? That's a question I've had in my mind ever since we started doing the users. Does anybody have any feedback on that? Oracle, you have a very active user organization. Are we doing something that's incremental to what you're doing? Are we conflicting? Can we help? Can you participate with what we're doing? The general questions I've always had. If anybody has any response to that, now you could do it. Otherwise, you could grab me during the or Susan and give us some feedback on that. Because we want to do something that's over and above and more technical, much more use to people who are living in the trenches every day, running networks, right? That issues that arise directly from the Open Fabric software. Sorry.
That's okay. There was a question back there.
Hold on.
Just a quick feedback. My person, do you want me to?
Yes. Can you just pass it down to him?
So this is just a quick feedback. My personal preference would have been if you had the user day conference, the 2-day user conference, and this 3-day developer workshop back to back in the same week. Like probably the first 2 days would be user day, and then the subsequent 3 days. That would just be my preference. With the weekend falling in over, I just chose to attend this one and not the user day.
I think we got that feedback from a lot of people, and I think that is going to be proposed, if I'm not stealing someone's thunder. Like I said, we didn't want to mess with the developers workshop this time, since this was the first time we were doing them back to back, and the developers workshop has always started on a Sunday evening. We just didn't want to mess with that. So that's why we chose to do it like the Thursday, Friday before. But I know that is on the table, that it would be all in 1 week.
Just a comment on, having to pay. Just comment on having to pay 2 registrations. The other thing you might consider would be, if you did do it like a 5-day, a 3 and a 2. One suggestion might be to have different levels of fees. So if somebody wanted to attend both, they could maybe get a discount, a bundled fee for both. If they only wanted to attend one or the other, you could do something like that.
That's a Bill question.
Yeah, we had that request this year also. So, what about location? Should we be doing this in the East Coast, Central Europe? Just give me a show of hands of whether we should be doing this location specific or whether we should do it. It would be better to do it together with this workshop.
I think you might get better attendance if you did them together.
I would put together.
Okay, all right.
And I guess the last thing I would mention is, Bill kind of talked about the fact that this is an open fabric, the users' day was Open Fabrics level, not Mellanox, not Intel. And I think that's kind of important because one of the things that was discussed was that, this is supposed to be an open source product and everybody's using it. And so we really wanted to keep it at that level. And kind of more specifically along those lines, we found out that most people were actually using the distro version of Open Fabrics. Very few people in production were actually downloading OFED directly from the Open Fabrics site. Most folks, at least in the room, were using Open Fabrics from a distro. And that might be just a point to keep in mind. So anyway, any other questions? All right, looks like I'm getting you off early.
Yeah, thank
We
you,
start
Susan.
early.
Great, we're on time. Paul? You're up. So, well,